It's Monday, February 26, 2024. We're not going to rush the court, but we are going to talk Detroit sports. That means it's time for the Knee Jerks podcast with Eno, Nick, and Big Al. I'm the Big Al of the equation, Big Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster, blogger, whatever you want to call it. And I'm here to talk sports with my good friends. First off, I guess he's the baby of our trio. He's the he's still on probation, double secret probation, maybe. And that would be Nick Milanovich. How's things going out the West Coast, Nick?
Hey, not too bad. Although we did get some flurries today, which is a surprise.
Yeah.
So it's not sunny Seattle today, but it's still green out here. So greetings, guys.
And as always, joining me is my longtime partner in crime, who's been with me for a decade and a half talking sports. The man who has the Substack star of this podcast, the Greg Eno Substack, Out of Bounds, and that would be Greg Eno. Greg, how's things in Oakland County?
Things in Oakland County are just fine. We're enjoying some unseasonably warm weather here in Michigan.
Indeed.
As you know, we are in the 50s and 60s all week long here in late February, early March, so that's good. I am Greg, for my WordPress. Now, heaven forbid I say WordPress. On my Substack, gregeno.substack.com. Please subscribe to it in your inbox every Monday. Today, as we record this on a Monday night, I just did a piece on Patrick Kane and how the Red Wings ought to re-sign him for an extension, but please subscribe, and I will be in your inbox every Monday. So follow me also on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. A couple of show notes here, some good stuff coming up for you next time we are together. March the 11th, we will be bringing back an old friend. Eastern Michigan football coach Chris Creighton will join us. Finally, we got him nailed down, and we will bring him into the StreamYard in a couple of weeks. Talk EMU football, what went wrong last year, what can maybe be corrected in 2024, and other things football with Coach Creighton. And a couple of his disciples have gone on to some much bigger and better things. So he's got to be, I would imagine he's got to be a little bit proud about that.
Oh, definitely.
His assistants getting these great jobs left and right. So we'll talk about that. And I'll let Nick talk about our guest we're having on March 25th.
Yes.
Because that's an interesting one as well. Nick, what do we got in store on the 25th?
Yes, we have an author, actually, John Miller. He is he lives in Michigan, as a matter of fact, and he wrote a book called The Big Scrum, which has to do with the early days of football and how Theodore Roosevelt helped the sport from being banned in the early 1900s.
Yes.
So very interesting. I had no idea about all this and about how deadly of a sport football used to be. So
that's I'm really excited about this because I just read a book over the last fall about the evolution of the forward pass. And it actually began in college. And the book kind of covers the late 19th century and into the early 20th century. And you're absolutely right. There were a number of deaths, not just injuries, but deaths on the college related to college football, not the pros, because that was before the pros really started. But yeah, college football was absolutely rife with serious injuries, if not deaths, in the early 20th century. I didn't know that. And I was reading this book, and it was fascinating. So I'm really eager to talk to John and pick his brain about that.
Yeah, and when you're talking about deaths, it's not like 1 or 2 or 3. It was 16, 18, 20 deaths a year.
Right.
It was insane. So,
yeah.
So, yeah. All right, right on. Cool.
All right. I think with that, before we hit the ground running, we have lots to talk about. Red Wings, Lions, but pretty much everything in Detroit sports. All 4 pro teams have made news recently. But Greg, I think there's a little feature you like to do.
There is a little feature. It's a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I'll give Al and Nick a clue or 2 or 3 of an individual who's born today in the world of sports. And if they can guess that person within the first 2 clues, they will receive a pop music chess set featuring Elvis Presley as the king, Aretha Franklin as the queen, and a bunch of one-hit wonders as pawns. So that's what's.
Oh boy, I can't. Vanilla Ice is one of the pawns there. Okay, there we go.
So that's it. That's at stake. This person, guys, this is a little tricky. I had a hard time finding somebody who I think you guys might have heard of. This is a weird day for birthdays, but this person, I hope you'll know him. He was made his name in the world of hockey. He was born in this state in 1957 and is one of the best American-born NHL players to ever play the game. Scored more than 500 goals. Was born on this date in New York City.
Huh. You know, my
Bossy?
first thought was,
No, born in
my first thought was going to be Chris
I thought it
Chelios, but that's too many goals
way too many
for a
goals.
defenseman.
Yeah.
So,
More than 500 goals he scored.
500 goals and is American.
Born 57.
Yeah.
Brett Hull?
No, good guess. He's a Hall of Famer too, but no. He's one of these guys that just flies under the radar. You know, I didn't even know he had this many goals. I mean, I knew he had a lot of goals, but I didn't know he had this many goals. So, yeah.
Gartner? Mike Gartner? No.
Save it for the next one. Hey, you get one.
All right.
Yeah. Nick's just throwing shit at the wall.
Of course, naming Gretzky.
Don Cherry.
All right, we need before Nick. We got to stop Nick in his tracks.
Hanson
here,
Brothers.
Oh yeah. If we want to talk Slapshot for 2 hours, I'm all for it. So, all right.
Oh, same here.
Yes. All right. I guess we need to start with the Detroit Red Wings because they have become the talk of the town recently. And God, where to start? Because right now they're comfortably in playoff position. They've won 5 straight games. They may have played their best game of the year Saturday afternoon when they destroyed the Blues 6-1 in a game where the Lions' offensive coordinator Ben Johnson was there to start the game off the goal horn, and then they scored like 3 goals almost immediately, so it kind of rubbed off on them. And then Sunday was just a wild, crazy night in Chicago involving Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat, Chris Chelios, and an overtime win for the Red Wings. So I guess we'll start with what happened last night, because kind of will lead into what we want to talk about. Greg had brought up Patrick Kane, which is definitely what we're going to discuss. But last night in Chicago, it was the return of Patrick Kane to the city for the first time since he got traded last year to the Rangers. And that ultimately overshadowed the Blackhawks retiring the jersey of Chris Chelios during that game. And it's funny how Chelios during his induction said he jokingly said, "I hope Patrick Kane doesn't overshadow my retirement," and ultimately that's what happened.
Exactly.
But what's funny though, then another ex-Blackhawk, Alex DeBrincat, who he's looking more like if Patrick Kane has a soulmate, it's probably Alex DeBrincat at this point, because those two are just electric together. DeBrincat tied the game at 2 late in the third on essentially from behind the goal line. He managed to bank it in. It was kind of a trick shot, but that tied up the game late in the third. The Wings would win 3-2 in overtime when Patrick Kane beat former Wings goalie Peter Mrazek on a breakaway. And the call from Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond were just, was just perfect. It was just a weird night all around, because in a wild post-game scene, guys, Kane received a standing ovation from Blackhawks fans after they lost an overtime game, which was absolutely nuts, which really says volumes about how the city feels about Kane, how Blackhawks fans really don't care right now because they are fully in tank mode. And it just kind of drove home as well just how valuable Patrick Kane has now become to the Red Wings, which we'll talk about as well. But Greg, that game last night, especially the third period, that was, if Hollywood had a screenwriter submit this into we can make a film of this, they would say it's too unbelievable.
Yeah, the thing about 3-on-3, I wrote about it today, is that 3-on-3 obviously opens up a lot of ice, but I kind of find 3-on-3 boring at times, because it's just all it does is just kind of encourage folks to just skate around the ice with the puck. waltzing around the ice. Sometimes don't even try to score.
Well, one thing teams realize is that in 3-on-3, it's all about possessing the puck, and if that means skating out of the zone and skating around, that's what they do.
That's what they do, but eventually, sooner or later, you got to try to score. Win the game, and there's just a lot of guys will skate out of the attacking zone back into their own zone. I don't find it all that exciting, to be frank with you. Now, but on occasion, there are some heart-stopping moments, and there was one certainly last night with the breakaway by Kane. And I had to laugh at your quote about what Chelios said about not. It was so. Prescient about the don't overshadow my night, because that's exactly what he did. Kane, that was a before the overtime though, guys, with less than 5 minutes to go, and when DeBrincat scored that practically impossible angle goal. Those are the kind of things that make you think there might be something special going on with this team. And I'm not talking Stanley Cup, don't get me wrong, but they may be onto something in terms of getting into the playoffs, maybe making a little bit of noise, because they were on 3 games in 4 nights, back to back, of course. Didn't play their best game. The Blackhawks did a great job of bottling up the ice all night long. It kind of looked like, well, it's just one of those nights. And even though the Blackhawks are scraping the bottom of the barrel in the standings, sometimes you just don't have it. And the wing, and even though James Reimer played great in goal, it did not look like it was in the cards, let's face it. And DeBrincat put that puck in from essentially behind the goal line, the end line. It just makes you think that, this is, and it's just what teams do, Al, and Nick, that aren't playing their best, when they're able to somehow scrape out a point. I would have been happy with a point, let alone 2. To then win the game in overtime, and especially in the fashion that they did, it just makes you think, gosh, would this have happened last year? Would have that happened 2 years ago? No. There's something different about this team, and clearly Kane is a huge part of that. But it's just something about these guys that they've really tightened things up after the new year. The very few Sunday was one of the few short. Power play goals they've given up. They don't give up power play goals that much at all anymore. Blackhawks have one of the worst, if not the worst, power play in the league. But of course, what happens when that happens is they score, and they did. But my gosh, and Reimer, who's been almost run out of town as well, played magnificently. I don't know if he was one of the 3 stars he should have been if he wasn't. But that was just an incredible dig down deep performance. And boy, to get 2 points out of that, I don't care who you play. That was very impressive.
Yeah, Nick, it's starting to look like Patrick Kane might be the most dangerous player on the ice for the Red Wings anymore.
He's been, playing well ever since he joined the team.
Yeah.
It didn't really take him long at all to simulate himself. And I think Greg said this last time on our last podcast, and I have to agree with him. I haven't watched Patrick Kane much at all. He's been in Chicago, and I really don't care about Chicago. So, but looking at him on the wings, I'm like, holy shit, this guy can stick handle. And so I'm not surprised he kind of put the nail in the coffin there. But he's contributed to not just this game, but I think the one, the game against Colorado, this is also an overtime win, just like that. And I think that one's even more impressive because Colorado is actually really good. And they pulled it out. And Kane was right there in the overtime, smacked it in right past the goalie. And they're coming from behind. They're winning games they're winning games when they're trailing going into the third period. That's the other thing they're doing. And that's another mark of a good team. I think they lead the league, I think they said.
And third period comebacks,
Right, in third period comebacks, which is you don't do that unless you've got some more offense. And we've been screaming for more offense around here.
Have we been screaming for offense on this?
Finally they have it.
Years, yes.
Well, not only that.
Go ahead.
If you look at the last few years before this, usually the third period they would just crumble and give up like 5 goals in the period. Right. It's just like complete opposite. And now they're scratching back against every single team. I think you guys are right. I think they had like 10 or 11 third period comebacks this year.
Yeah.
That's not that's not a small number of games.
Right.
That's part of their signature now.
Right.
And I was always hesitant to kind of get excited about them until going into February and into March, because that's when they fell apart last year, and even the year before. It's just kind of like they were done. But man, they're fighting back. Kudos to Yzerman for making adjustments and the coaching staff to kind of assimilate a bunch of new guys into the team. This is a much better hockey team than they were a year ago by a lot. So
well, you can look at. I was just going to say they have 12 double-digit goal scorers this year. I can't remember the last time the Wings had 5 double-digit goal scorers in a season. At least that's what it seemed like. They would have maybe one or two guys around the 20-25 mark. God forbid someone got 30. And now, DeBrincat has 22, Larkin 25, Lucas Raymond, that's another one who was really shook off the sophomore slump and has become an offensive weapon again. He's going to have 20 goals this year. But then again, Kane just makes everybody better because you were able to put him on the top line or the second line, and then that puts other players in a more productive position where they're more effective. Where now the Wings are pretty much rolling 4 effective lines. I mean, they just gave their essentially their fourth line center, Michael Rasmussen, just signed a 4-year contract extension this week.
Right.
Yeah. And he's been a very effective player. He's doing, for a number 1 draft pick, he has really now kind of slotted himself into as the grind line type, and he's really going to have a long career with the way he's playing now. He's not going to be a huge goal scorer, but he's doing everything else the Wings need.
Well, Yzerman has been able to. I don't know how he does it. He's able to sign guys. He does not. He really doesn't give out foolish contracts. He really doesn't.
Yeah.
I can't. He's been the general manager for almost 5 years now, believe it or not. And I don't remember a contract. I mean, there might have been a couple contracts, short-term contracts didn't really work out, maybe, where the guy that he signed didn't really return much, but he hasn't stuck the team with any sort of, albatross type contracts, where they're just hanging around the necks of the organization and that is kind of slowing the rebuild down or anything like that. He's able to just, even to DeBrincat, when they got to DeBrincat last summer, he quickly signed him to a very palatable contract. And I don't know what he'll end up doing. I suspect he will extend Kane, but I don't. He'll probably able. I think part of it is the players that he signs.
Yeah.
Like being in Detroit. I think that there's part of they always talk about hometown discounts and so forth. I think there's an Yzerman discount in there. I know it sounds crazy, but I think some of these guys are willing to sign with the Red Wings because they see that the organization is starting to return back to, let's face it, it's one of the most, storied franchises in the league, and it's starting to return now to what it used to be. And I think that the players who are, and he was signing guys here when that wasn't happening. Now that it is happening, I think he'll be able to sign even more. I don't think he's going to have a hard time getting Kane to commit. I really don't. I think Kane and the Red Wings have been a perfect marriage. Somebody put it perfectly. I think it was on Twitter. He said, "Look, when the Red Wings signed Kane, I was hoping for some veteran leadership and chipping a few goals here. This guy, he's got 28 points in 27 games. He's on a 36 goal pace for an 82 game season. He's vintage Kane. He's vintage Patrick Kane at age 35. So it's and the Red Wings are paying him $2.5 million right now.
Yeah. Isn't that like the old Greg? Isn't it kind of like the old school Wings of when they were in their cup runs where they would pick up veterans and it's like they de-aged themselves 5 years, looking at someone like Chris Chelios or
Larry Murphy,
exactly. Where these guys were they're on the tail end of their careers, then they come to Detroit and they're very effective for another 5 or longer, and Kane is starting to look like that kind of player because I was the same way. I was like. There was a lot of question marks in regards to that hip surgery. A lot of players have had issues coming back from that.
Right.
Yet He seems to have fully recovered from that, and he has not seemed to have lost a lick of his offensive skill. Obviously he's not any kind of an ace playing defense or anything like that. But you don't get Patrick Kane to play defense. You get him to put the puck in the net and help other people put the puck in the net, and that's exactly what he's doing. And I still just get a kick out of watching Kane and DeBrincat play together. It's like they have one mind between the two, the way those two play together. And even it's like I don't think the Wings kind of do tend to split them up to kind of spread the wealth, and also the fact that neither one of them are exactly very good defensively. But when you need to score, you put those two on the ice together, and there's going to be fireworks.
Right.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that then, Nick. Last year, Steve Yzerman, he inked. Greg and I talked about this a lot, especially when it came to Dylan Larkin. That will he extend Larkin? He's going to be a free agent, and the next thing you know, he signed Larkin, he signed Jake Wallman, he signed Ali Mata to contract extensions before the trade deadline. This past week, I just brought up he signed Michael Rasmussen to a 4-year extension with AAV of 3.2, very reasonable. But now, do you think we'll see the same thing with Patrick Kane? Is he going to be the Wings have to lock him up, don't they? Because you cannot let him hit the open market because there's going to be suitors for him.
Oh, for sure. I mean, first of all, I am impressed how he's playing at age, 35 or 36, whatever he is right now.
Yep.
So he's not a spring chicken anymore in NHL terms. But you don't get a star of that caliber very often come through your organization. And he's playing damn well, and fans are excited. His teammates are responding to him. Why wouldn't you re-sign him? At least give him another couple of years.
Guy. Yes. Yeah, I can see 2 years, even 3 possibly for him right now. Greg, I know you wrote about this today. I think you're all in on a 2-year extension for Kane, and they have the cap room to do it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it, one of the points I made is what you referenced, Al, a little while ago about, if anybody knows the value of having elite players in the mid-30s and what they can contribute to a team, it's Yzerman. Because he played with a ton of them. He played with a ton of those guys, Brett Hull and Luke Robitaille and, Larionov and you name it, Hasek and on and on and on, and Lidstrom and Larry Murphy. And, I can name a million of these guys who played at a high level at Chelios when they were supposedly, supposed to be over the hill. So he knows, Yzerman knows what kind of value those guys. And like I said, this would not be some charitable act. Kane has earned the money. It's not like, let's just bring this guy back because he's Patrick Kane and it's a legacy thing. No, 28 points in 27 games is nothing to sneeze at. And when he was out for a little while for I can't remember when that was, the Wings struggled a little bit. I mean, they clearly missed him. And you mentioned DeBrincat, that chemistry for sure, and Larkin as well. But there's just something about this guy that I'm so thankful now that I'm able to see him play on a consistent basis, because when he was in Chicago, I just didn't see it. And I knew he was good, of course, just by looking at his numbers. But the way this guy, and Nick mentioned the goal against Colorado, that was another vintage. It's like a Brett Hull type of a goal, the type of goal that a sniper scores. But this breakaway thing Sunday, you could just tell that he's a born natural goal scorer. He was patient. There was no. He get happy feet. He was so patient and calm, and he just slowly, and if you look at the play, I looked at it like 2 or 3 times. I backed it up and then watched it again. Mrazek flinched. He flinched just briefly. And I don't know what it is. I was trying to look and see what he was flinching at. And the only thing I could think of was that he was just flinching because Kane was so patient. He just wouldn't make a move. And then as soon as Mrazek flinched, Kane popped it in the upper corner. And it was like, it was just such a goal scorer's goal. Yeah. Sometimes when guys get a breakaway like that, when they're literally free from the center ice on, with nobody even near them, they almost panic. They almost don't know what to do. They've got so much time. I just get the feeling with a guy like Kane, his whole heartbeat slows down. He sees everything in slow motion. And that's what players of that magnitude do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was, you put it perfectly. It was a goal scorer's goal, because Mrazek got ate up, and there's no way he was going to make that stop. I mean, there's no one else on the wings I think you would have wanted on the ice at that moment than Kane with the puck, because you just knew the game was over. As you said, he was so patient, waiting for and as you said, and you put it perfectly. Mrazek flinched, he blinked, and that's when Kane saw the opening, top shelf, game over. And the crowd goes wild, which was awesome.
Yeah. You guys mentioned something else that's probably important to this whole recipe with Kane being on Detroit, is and like a lot of the other guys that you mentioned, like Fedisov and Hasek and a bunch of those other guys. Yeah. It's not only that they're great players given a chance to play more. Yeah. It's great players getting a chance to play more and playing for something, because make no mistake about it, as good or as bad as the Wings have been in recent years, the message has always been clear with Yzerman. It's like, you're going to compete. We are going to go out there and compete no matter what. And and Yzerman, but from his moves this past summer, made it clear is that they need to get better. They're trying to get into the playoffs, and Kane is contributing to that. So I think that feeds his energy too, because he's won everything. I mean, what else has he got left to win? But from a personal standpoint, but he can still, at his age, contribute and be a part of, the rebirth of the Red Wings. I'm hoping it's a rebirth. So, so it's a perfect match. So
and it's worth noting where they are in the standings right now. And since this recent run, they've won five in a row. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. They have 70 points right now. The Wings are one up on the Lightning for the 2 wild cards. They have the top wild card at the moment, and they're 8 up. I think that's the difference. They're 8 points up on the next closest wild card contender in the Devils. And then they are only 4 points back of the red-hot Maple Leafs. They've won 7 in a row. I know they've been hot. I didn't realize they were that damn hot. So who just think the Wings? If the Leafs had been just playing 500 hockey, they'd probably be in third place at this point the way they're playing right now. So we have 4 games left to play before the trade deadline. 24 left in the regular season. I'm not going to say the playoffs are a sure thing done deal yet, but they have put themselves, Greg, in a position to essentially have their destiny is in their own hands. They continue to play good hockey. They are going to play in the playoffs. Probably and as you said, more importantly, they have an opportunity to make noise in the playoffs. The way the Wings are playing right now, Greg. If I was not any other team in the playoffs, I would not want to play the Wings right now because they look like a tough matchup.
Well, one of the things that can be dangerous when you're playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs is when you're playing a team who doesn't really know what they don't know. The Red Wings have a lot of players that, as many veterans as they do have, they still have a lot of players who've never played in the playoffs before. Seider and Raymond, and there's a few others who've never been in the playoffs before. Rasmussen, never been in the playoffs. And there are other players who've been to the playoffs, but who've been on teams who've made the playoffs, but haven't really been a contributing factor in their teams. Yeah. So that's, but sometimes that's not bad. You can go in there kind of loosey-goosey. They've all talked about how this is their playoffs right now. I know that's kind of cliche, but they're thinking, look, just to get to the playoffs, the Red Wings, and this, Al, in those salad days when the Red Wings were always, had everything wrapped up by February. Yeah. And they would play a team that had been scraping. Usually they would have a first-round matchup against a team that was scraping to get into the playoffs. That team that they were playing in the playoffs had been playing at a high level of intensity for maybe 3 or 4 weeks leading into the playoffs, where the Red Wings were kind of not really coasting, but they didn't have that kind of urgency. And sometimes
exactly.
Sometimes it would bite the Red Wings in the ass, in the first round. And so the Red Wings now have a chance to be one of those teams, like to your point about nobody wanting to play, but just a team that just is going to go in with hey, let's just kind of let it all hang out. But they've
house money, as they say, house money.
Yeah, and they've got some veteran players though who have been there. DeBrincat and Kane, of course, and Sherrod and some other guys, Perron, who have been there, who've played in big games, who've won Stanley Cups. So it'll be fun to see that blend of but it's funny, their captain has hardly any playoff experience, which is
right.
weird.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is. But they got to get there first. But I really believe that they will make it to the playoffs. I don't think they'll get a first round home ice advantage because you have to be finished fourth. They're not going to do that. But they'll be in, and I don't know who they're going to play, but and they probably won't win the first round series. But I expect them to win a couple of games. Yeah.
Yeah, I like your Donald Rumsfeld references there. Kind of, there's known unknowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. And I said that really describes the Red Wings in a nutshell right now. There's a lot we don't when it comes to playing hockey late in the season. This hasn't been a thing in 8 years. So no, I should say important hockey in about 8 years. This has not been a thing. And as you mentioned. Larkin, he's the only person on that roster who has played in a playoff game as a Red Wing, I believe. No one else. Like I said, other guys have been in the playoffs, but none of them have been there as a Red Wing.
Right.
But
it's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's which says volumes about God. How old is Larkin at this point?
You mean Luke Glendening isn't on the team anymore?
Yeah. Oh Jesus.
Helm?
Yeah, but yeah. Oh yeah, I can't wait to see. And there's a breakaway from Helm, and he's stoned. How many times did we hear that? Oh my God! But
you know what?
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Speaking of which, they are kind of in the loosey goosey sort of, or they can be loosey goosey going into the playoffs. It reminds me more of the Red Wings of the late '80s during Jacques Demir's era.
Yeah, that's a good reference there.
Sure.
You weren't expecting them to go to the conference cup finals against the almighty Oilers,
right?
But they fought some hard series to go in there, and even though I remember the series they lost, I think 4-1, but they hit the Oilers in the chin the first game. They stunned them pretty good.
Yes, they did.
So. And it just kind of whetted everybody's appetite. I'd love to see something like that. I'd like to see them knock out the Maple Leafs. It's been a long time since they played the Leafs in a playoff game.
Yeah,
wouldn't that be glorious? A Wings Leafs playoff series? That would be absolutely awesome.
Oh wow!
The John Brophy choke. Remember that?
Yeah,
remember that?
No, that's the one thing that's the one thing we've really missed out in Detroit. Is a playoff series against original six East, teams, the Bostons and Toronto and Montreal, and the Rangers. The Wings rarely have had playoff matchups with them because they were in the damn West for so damn long. I would love to see them play the Maple Leafs in a playoff series or Boston or something like that. It would be awesome. I just want to see. I just want to watch. We're watching good hockey. I just want to start now. We're going to get into high stakes hockey, and I can't. It's been so long since we've seen it because we were, like I said, we were spoiled for a quarter century, of the Wings for the vast majority of that time. We're at least contenders to make noise in the playoffs, and so I'm getting excited. This is a long time. It's been a long time, guys, since I've actually starting to get really excited and to watch every damn Wings game at this point because. Every game's important now. The playoffs are on the line. You don't want to give up a point. That's I was with Greg if that game last night. I just the way where things are going. If you can get 1 point, I'll be happy. Just get 1 point, I'll be happy. And to get 2, I was elated. Mm-hmm. So and it's been a long time since I've felt that way about the Red Wings. It's been a very long time until this year.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so nice to see. It's so refreshing to see they're playing competitive hockey and meaningful games this late into the year. It's been a long, long time.
Yes, too long.
So,
but it's even last year, Greg, it really felt like the Wings were more pretenders and playoff contenders.
Yes,
and it was pretty obvious that Steve Yzerman was he was pretty much already convinced of that. It was just that those Ottawa games that kind of convinced him otherwise. So now there's a lot of talk. Is Yzerman going to do anything at the trade deadline? Because this is still a team that's in building up mode, and you really do you want to give up a lot of assets to pick up a short-term gain for a team that likely isn't going to win it all anyway? See, so Yzerman's, there's a lot of talk that Yzerman just may sit with a bad hand, and just hold on to his assets and continue building in the offseason.
Yeah, if we've learned anything about Yzerman as GM, is he plays the long game. I mean, he's not one of these guys that's going to do anything for short-term gain and long-term disadvantage. And I suspect that he'll be the same. There's no reason to believe that he would be any different. Now, I mean, he's probably, if he makes any move at all, it'll be some low risk, low reward.
Yeah.
Maybe a pickup of a depth guy. It's not going to make anybody get excited. Somebody we're going to have to go to Google to look up who he is. Yeah. But I don't know that it's going to be anything splashy. I doubt it. And he's playing the long game. If they do make the playoffs this year, which I think they will, it's probably a year ahead of his schedule, Yzerman's schedule. So, although having said all that, when he signed Patrick Kane in late November, I said at that time that told me that he thought that this team was ready to take that next step.
Yeah.
So, had Kane not been available, or had that not kind of fallen into his lap, Yzerman may not have thought that this was a playoff team yet either. Right. But now that they are put themselves in this position, I still don't think that changes his overall outlook of making this team. He's always said, he says these things that for whatever reason, a lot of the fan base just refuses to, absorb it. He keeps saying, look, I want to make the Red Wings good for many, many years in a row, not just make a cameo appearance in the playoffs and then sink back down again like the Pistons do. Okay. I want to make this team back to the way it was when I played, when we were consistently good. And so I don't see him changing that. So if he stood pat, it wouldn't surprise me, frankly.
Yeah, Nick, do you think would you be on are you on that feeling as well too? Is that we're not going to see a very active trade deadline for the Red Wings?
I think Yzerman will either do some kind of minor deal, like Greg said, or he gets an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah.
And that offer would have to really be fitting into his plans. I don't think the Red Wings, they're good. They have a chance to make the playoffs, but they're not in this one player away from reaching the Stanley Cup. So it's stupid to really pull the trigger on something unless they're making the Wings good for a number of years, not just this year. They're not like, obvious Stanley Cup finalists.
Right.
So why would you go kind of like you make just a trade just to do it? It doesn't make any sense. And Yzerman's never done that. He made some trades last year. You can argue whether it was good or not, like Bertuzzi. Well, Bertuzzi's not even on the team that he traded him to.
Yeah.
And that team got bounced in the first round. I don't even know if they won a game, but they got bounced in the first round. Who's the guy they like? Now his name escapes me for some reason. They sent Phil Hronek. People are like, why did you send away a defenseman? It's like, I got an offer I couldn't refuse. It was too good to pass up. So, he made smart moves each time. And it's funny. I was thinking about this, and I know we'll touch on this for the other teams. It's like there's sometimes GMs you'll question. You'll say, what the fuck is this guy doing? It makes no sense. It's not logical. But with Yzerman, it's always been logical what he's trying to do. It's just not instant gratification each time. With Brad Holmes, same thing. It's like, I can't question the guy. Like, he's brilliant. He's been brilliant so far. Overall, he's, shown smarts.
Yeah.
They make a mistake, they correct it. And so Are they going to make some big? I don't think they're going to make a big splash unless it's something absurdly difficult to pass up. So
yeah.
I would say
the only my biggest concern, if the concern I have with this team, though, I know we kind of touched on this in previous shows, is goaltending. I don't know if Alex Lyons played great. I mean, he has essentially saved their season, considering Husso has been hurt for the majority of it, and Reimer's been very inconsistent. He played very well yesterday. That, I guess, Greg, is my one concern, is that they are leaning hard on a goalie who has never been leaned on like this before. And I guess you have to hope that Reimer steps up his game, or Husso gets better, recovers and is able to play like he did for good parts of last year. But that's at this point, that's my concern if the Wings, is that, they're improving all over the ice, and goaltending has just been a struggle to really find that guy. Now, that guy is probably going to be Kosa, but he's in the AHL. He was just named Player of the Week down there, but he's still 22 and young, and we've all said, goalies blossom late, like Alex Lyon this year. He's 30 years old, and this is really the first time he's become a number one goalie. But that's my one concern, Greg, is that the goaltending on this team is still, if not a question mark, I think there's not a lot of they don't have a lot of history of being number one guys. I'll put it that way.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny, is as old as Lyon is, and I say old because he's 31.
Yeah.
You look at go to his, hockey reference, look up his career. He has not played a lot of games, period, let alone playoff games. He's not played a lot of games, period. But, for a 31-year-old guy. But I've seen a lot, and you have too, Al. You've seen a lot of good goalies, Hall of Fame goalies, struggle in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And you've also seen a lot of, who's that guy in the playoffs play over their head and stand on their head, as we say in hockey.
Yep.
So I'm not trying to downplay what you're saying, because I agree with you. I actually do agree with you that could potentially be what gets them. But I've also seen it where goalies can be very mercurial. They can play very, very well in the regular season, and they just fall apart. I saw Mike Vernon not play very well in 1996. I saw, Bob Essenza completely shit the bed in 1994.
How about Chris Osgood stepping up and saving a Red Wings playoff run?
And why? Because Dominic Hasek, a Hall of Famer, was not playing well. Okay,
exactly.
Well, that's what happens with goalies. And Vernon, of course, redeemed himself a year later, won the Stanley Cup. Yeah, these guys, it's kind of like closers in baseball. You don't know necessarily what you're going to get night to night. You think you do. I mean, I would love it if you could just grab another goalie that's leading the Vezina race right now and put him between the pipes for the Red Wings. You can't, but that's not possible. So you got to go with what you have, and you never know. I mean, maybe some of that we don't know what we don't know thing can extend to the goalies. Maybe Lyon goes into the playoffs with, hey, I'm just Alex Lyon. I'm the guy you got to look up on Google. But I'm 31 years old, and I'm here to play in the playoffs, and I'm going to steal a couple of games and have you staring at the ceiling. You never know. You never know.
Yeah, I thought you were going to you'd mentioned, remember the old school American Express commercials where they'd have, kind of this role player athlete. It goes, I have an American Express card to, prove who I am.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's essentially Alex Lyon at this point.
Yeah.
But to kind of wrap up our Red Wings talk, all right, Nick. I know you're probably still kicking yourself because you thought the Wings were going to lose that game yesterday. But I'll just ask you this: do you think the Wings actually end up maybe finishing out a wild card and actually maybe moving up above the Maple Leafs? I think they can play well enough to actually, if not get a home ice advantage, but to maybe even get a better seed. Because right now they would be the 7th seed.
Well, they're playing well enough right now at the moment, so it feels like they could climb up.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think it makes a difference? I guess that's a better question. Because in the NHL, does it really make a difference what seed you are? Because how many times have we seen an 8 seed make a run?
You know what? I think with the NHL, and I think last year proved it, just get into the damn playoffs. I think Florida Panthers barely got in last year, and they went to the Cup Finals.
Yeah.
So, and that happens all the time. Honestly, I think winning the President's Trophy is a curse, or President's Cup, or whatever the hell it's called. And
don't touch it.
Like it backfired on the Wings in the past, and hell, it backfired on the Bruins last year. I mean, they had a hell of a regular season, but just flamed out in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I don't care what position they get in, just get into the playoffs. Let's play some playoff hockey in Detroit. So
I think that's how we all feel.
See.
I think you're right there. It doesn't matter where they finish. It's just get in the party and then have some fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, you don't ask anybody in that team who do you want to play. You just want to get in there. And I think right now, if the playoffs started today, as they say, I think the Wings would be playing either Boston or New York, the Rangers, depending on who finishes second between the number one seed is going to play because the Rangers and Boston are both tied for the number one seed. They would play right now. They would play Tampa. Those teams would. Whereas the Red Wings would then play either Boston or New York, depending on who was finished second there. So, those are two really good teams. Yeah. I'm not expecting them to win in the first round, but I am expecting them to win at least a couple of games, I think.
Yeah, I would say I would expect I remember when last time the Pistons made the playoffs and they got blown out in 4 games. I don't anticipate anything like that for the Red Wings. They will be they will be a valid opponent to anyone they face in the playoffs. But I think the Stanley Cup playoffs have proven that. It's not about where you're seated. It's about how healthy you are, how well your goalie is playing, and I think those and some luck involved. With matchups and injuries and things like that. But I think Greg said it best. If one of the goalies stands on their head, who knows how far they could go. So I guess that's where it really comes down to. All right,
the Florida Panthers last year. They were the Florida Panthers last year.
Yeah,
their remarkable run. The Bruins were out in the first round. Yeah, and the Bruins won 1 million games.
Yeah, what a top seed gets knocked out. That throws seeding all out the window. Who knows what happens after that? Right. Exactly. Right. All right. With that, I guess it's time for question 2 of the birthday game. So let's hit the NHL again.
Yes, this is for that chess set. Elvis Presley is the king. Aretha Franklin is the queen, and a bunch of one-hit wonders as the pawns. This person was born in 1957. He scored over 500 goals. He's a Hockey Hall of Famer. He was born in New York City. He played for the Blues, Flames, Penguins, and Bruins. And he is one of them. I think he might be he was the first American player to score 500 goals and reach 1,000 points in his career. And he flies under the radar, which you guys know because you can't think of his name yet.
Yeah. What were the teams again?
St. Louis, Calgary, Pittsburgh, and Boston. Between 1981 and 1997.
Any guesses, Nick?
The only one I had is the second one I blurted out, but that's not right. It was Mike Gardner, I thought.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be Gardner. Not those teams. Huh.
No.
Oh, God. That's
born in 57.
Born a U.S. player born in 57.
He won 3 Stanley Cups, too.
And a long career.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you'll say who it is, and we'll just the palms of the forehead,
and then look them up to make sure Greg was right on the 500 goals.
God, a U.S. player of that era. God, I'm drawing a blank. How about you, Nick? I'm drawing a blank with those teams specifically.
For some reason, I'm thinking of the early 90s Penguins when he said Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know who the hell it is, though.
Yeah. I think we're just going to have to To flip over the card and wait for the $50 question, the gimme.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's the way it's looking. So, Greg, I think you stumped us, or you're on close to stumping us. That doesn't happen
It's a
very
tough
often.
one. It's a little
Yeah.
for as many accolades as this guy has. It's still a tough one. It's funny.
Yeah. All right. Well, now he's pandering to us, trying to make us feel better.
He's teasing us.
Yeah. All right. You might as well go from the yin to the yang. Let's talk a little bit of Detroit Pistons because they're NBA and the Pistons. But the hot topic with the Pistons was not their losing and the losing streak and all that stuff. It was how they lost on Saturday night, guys. The Pistons lost to the Orlando Magic 112-109 as Paolo Banchero hit a jumper and he got Andy and one for the winning margin with less than a second to play. But replays showed Banchero shuffled his feet, moved his pivot foot. He traveled. At least when I played ball, that was traveling what he did. He shuffled his feet. He moved his pivot foot. He never even set his pivot foot realistically. But it was reviewed by the NBA. They released their little, when there's a controversial play, they tell you what the call was, and they used the catch-all term. It was a gather step. So I know I'm getting old. I haven't played. I played in high school. It was like I might as well play with George Mikan. The way the game has changed. But but every time I see a gather step or a Euro step, or the way some of these guys will take step backs, in my mind, I just scream, that was a walk. That is traveling. What am I watching here, guys? Nick, Greg, I have no idea what a walk is anymore because these guys are taking 3, 4, 5 steps, it looks like at times. But it's a gather step. I don't know what the hell a gather step is right now.
I was watching a game yesterday. I was watching Phoenix and LA for a little while, and in the first quarter, I'm not sure if it was Booker or somebody from Phoenix was bringing the ball up the floor, and he blatantly. And this was not a drive to the lane like Paolo's play was. He was just bringing the ball up the floor. Didn't even get to the 10-second line. Yeah, and he, for whatever reason, he stopped his dribble and took a step and then made a pass. And I'm like, that's like traveling from when I was in kindergarten. I mean, you can't do that. You can't stop your dribble, take a step, and then pass the ball. And I said, nobody, no big deal. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
If you want to not call a travel on a guy going to the hoop in the waning seconds of a game, okay, whatever. But this guy's bringing the ball up the court in the first quarter and a blatant, not even to the 10-second line. You're not going to whistle a travel then? Yeah. It was, I don't know. It seems like we've been talking about traveling forever in the NBA, even in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, I don't know. I know that the refs like to swallow their whistles at the end of games. I understand that, but that was. I don't know what to say about that one. I really don't.
Yeah. Nick, when's the last time did they ever even call palming or carrying anymore? Because the offensive game I see today isn't the way I was taught how to play basketball. Again, I'm old, but
I'm younger than you guys, but I feel old on this one too because I'm watching games. I'm like, did that guy just travel? And I'm like, I can't convince myself he didn't travel.
Right.
It's like, how are the refs not calling all of these? And whatever that dance step, on the Magic game, like I couldn't tell when the game was actually going on because I was watching the end of that game, but you could see it afterwards. Like, holy shit! Like this looked like travel to me.
And the ref was right there, staring at him.
I just let it go. And I don't know. Part of it is the whole phenomenon of, well, the Pistons are so shitty, we're not going to bother calling anything in their favor anyway. So we just want to get the hell out of here. So, I don't know.
That is a good point because we could bring up is that after that Orlando game, Cade Cunningham spoke to the press and was complaining how I believe he had scored almost 60 points in the last 2 games. And it's not like he's taking all jump shots. He's actually driving to the hole. And he hasn't taken a single foul shot. that makes you wonder about what you're saying there. Maybe it's the Pistons, so we're not going to call anything.
Well, if you look at the Pistons games, they're getting called for a lot of fouls, and while their opponents are not at all. I think there is a big discrepancy in the Magic game for sure.
Yeah.
Thompson almost got fouled out of the game. Like, he had 3 fouls before the end of the first half.
Right.
They had to pull him from the game. And I can't remember who else was that way. Might have been Ivy, actually. So it's like, past the first 5 guys, they don't have much. So, the ability falls off a cliff really fast. So, and so, yeah, I have no idea what's going on. The phenomenon of a sucky team not getting the calls going their way.
I think they said that Cade Cunningham has scored his last 51 points he scored have been without the benefit of a free throw.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Single free throw.
And it's not like he's just taking 3-pointers and pull-up jumpers. Right. He is driving to the hole.
Yeah.
But the game has changed so much. I don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. No, I was just kind of agree with you. I mean, Cade was just driving to the basket a lot of the time. You would think you'd get contact, a good amount of that time. But
yeah, exactly.
I didn't realize he hadn't gone to the line for at least 2 straight games.
Yeah. No, it's just funny how the game has changed completely. I know we touched on this some with City when he was on, but at times I don't recognize the game I'm watching, specifically at the pro level. It's not as blatant at the college level, basically because the skill level isn't as good, and and the emotions involved are completely different. Because we just looked at the Wake Forest Duke game yesterday. With Wake Forest rushing the court, but it's just funny how the game has changed to the point where with the non-calls. What's funny, guys? When I played in high school. Here I am talking about that. I sound like Al Bundy after scoring 4 touchdowns against Polk High, but but when I played, I was a center. And I was never allowed to leave for the most part. I needed to stay in the key. I stayed in the paint. I wouldn't get 3 seconds, but I just hovered right around the blocks, the lower block in the foul line. That's where I could not stray from those spots.
Right.
And every position had a spot to be. The point guard did not have to be a shooter. He had to be able to pass. Your scoring positions was your shooting guard, your small forward, and then your power forward and center got all the garbage buckets near the basket. And now today's game is almost positionless. You have a 7'5" guy shooting 3-pointers and being very proficient at it, and then you have how the rules have changed to where who cares if you didn't plant your pivot foot? You can just keep moving. The Euro step, I have no idea. It's still that's not a walk, and yes, I know I'm in my 60s and I'm old as dirt and all that, but good Lord, don't you think, Greg, they need to crack down a little bit on the offenses at this point? I mean, it just seems unfair trying to play defense in the NBA anymore.
Yeah, you're right. We did touch on this a little bit last time, or when City was on, but it's the players have gotten so it's the proficiency behind the arc that and you mentioned the 7'5" guy who can shoot threes. Okay.
Yeah,
that's what's doing it. It's the proficiency of the big men now to shoot those long shots that has kind of skewed and made playing defense so difficult. The NBA even finally relented. I don't know how many years ago and said, "Okay, you can play zone now. Just go ahead and you can flat out play zone." They were playing zone anyway, but they finally made it officially out. We'll take that rule off the books.
Yeah, they stopped calling illegal defense for the most part. Yeah.
Right. So these guys, though, Al, it's the fact that they're stretching the floor with these big men. Yeah. That's, I think, is what is. I'm not going to say harming the game, but that's what's changing the game. And I think we even said some I don't know who said it. That might have been you, Al. I'm not sure it was Al or Nick that said, if anybody can come up with a secret sauce to defend the 3-point shot, some innovator, some innovative coach, some basketball wizard that can come up with some way to best guard, but I watch these games and they move the ball around they swing it around so fast.
Yes.
You could have 6 defenders out there and not be.
It's like they
wide open.
They get an open jumper almost every time.
Right.
Just because they're so proficient at moving the space, speed, and moving the ball around.
And in any given possession, you'll see 3 or 4 players, 3 or 4 of them, stationed behind the 3-point line. 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, isn't it something more? Like in today's game, you'll watch, and there'll be just a guy standing on the corner, waiting for that ball to swing around to him, so he can take that 3-point shot. And that's what he does. He doesn't move. You don't see. He's not like Rip Hamilton, who was like a whirling dervish out there. They just have a couple guys. One standing. One on the at the top of the key, and another one down in the corner, just waiting for the ball to come their way so they can take a 3-point shot. And you can't stop it. That's the thing. You can't stop it.
Well, unless you put Isaiah Livers in for a corner 3, then you can definitely just let him shoot because he can't water if he fell out of a boat. But no, you're right. It's just there's always some guy waiting to launch a 3. And some guys are, like now, 3 or 4 feet behind the line.
Yes.
And even making it. So it's not even like it's, just barely, like borderline touching the line with his tip of his toes. But they're shooting from far back now. I'm waiting for the 4-point line to start at half court.
Why not?
It'll just like start chucking them like the the fans do when they want to they can win a car kind of thing. But
speaking of Rip Hamilton, did you guys catch the video of Rip? He went back to Connecticut for some sort of I'm not sure why he was there. And at halftime, he made a a half court shot like he was shooting a 15-foot jumper. Did you see that? He swished it.
No.
I believe it though. I would believe it.
I can believe it.
What's kind of leads us? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say, when we're talking about, you're not sure who's playing what position versus like the old days where you had a lot more definition on it. Watch some Pistons games now. I think Duran is dribbling the ball up the court and then driving to the basket. It's like, what is this guy, like 6'9", 6'10"? And imagine Bill Laimbeer being the primary ball handler.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
And that's the thing, though. You could argue
Bill a little more graceful, but
you could argue Bill Laimbeer was still a rudimentary. He was an early stretch 5 because he could shoot a 3-pointer when guys his size didn't do it. So maybe we could blame this all on Bill Laimbeer being able to be a 6'11" guy and could shoot a 3-pointer. It all goes there. But while we're arguing about the NBA, we got to at least touch on what the hell was the NBA All-Star Game, guys? I mean, we've ranted on the various All-Star games over the years. Like Greg and I have always been of the name a Pro Bowl team and then just don't play it. Well, essentially, that's what the NFL does now. They name a Pro Bowl team, then they have a flag football game. I think everybody's happy with that, and they have a skills competition, whatever. The NBA All-Star Game was just hilarious because before the game, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, he told the media to expect a good competitive game, and it wasn't. The East won in a ridiculous, completely defense-free exhibition over the West, 211 to 186. 211. Post-game, Silver looked pretty much disgusted. This is his quote when he handed out the trophy. To the Eastern Conference All-Stars, you scored the most points. Well, congratulations. This trophy is yours. He did not look like a very happy man at all during the All-Star game. And be honest, guys, the NBA All-Star weekend is, savor the 3-point shooting contest where they still get named players to take part. And then and Steph Curry going against the WNBA sharpshooter was also entertaining. She really held her own. I mean, she was shooting from the NBA level, 3. And the entire All-Star Game weekend has really become a bore. When you have a G Leaguer, Matt McClung, who has 4 career NBA games, winning the slam dunk competition for the second year in a row, that pretty much sums it up. If you can't get the stars of the NBA to give a shit about the weekend, and actually take part in the skills competitions. And actually, I'm not, if you're going to have an all-star game, at least show a little bit of something. They just stand there on defense. They don't. I'm not asking them to play lockdown defense, but just kind of stand there whistling Dixie as people are driving by them or taking 30-foot threes. It's ridiculous. It's silly. It's like, why even bother having the game? This is how players are going to treat it. And the players are pretty blunt about it. Says, we really don't give a shit. We just don't want to get hurt. It's a long season. And here we are. I don't know what to make of this anymore, Nick. At this point, the NBA has to decide on something, because what their All-Star Weekend isn't working anymore.
Well, I think that All-Star game answers the question, can there possibly be enough offense in a game? It's like, that was way too much offense.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't blame the players, and I don't blame the teams for not wanting the players to go balls to the wall in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine getting hurt in that game, and you're you're earning 30-40 million a year. And then now you have to rehab for the rest of the season. You're out, or you're out multiple seasons because of a nagging injury. It's like, why would you want to do that? It's kind of become a circus, actually. And I'm thinking, how do you make any of these games better? Honestly, for football, play paper football and give them as much alcohol as possible to make it a little more interesting to play paper football.
Commissioner Nick here.
Penny basketball and penny hockey. And baseball, just cancel the damn game. That one's the worst. But
well,
maybe
it used
not
to
the
be
worst,
the
but
best.
it's pretty
And
bad.
it used to be the best, easily.
Actually, that's probably pretty. That one you can stay, but I it's not that interesting to watch that one either.
Well, the home run derby is overshadowed it anyway for the most part.
Right. Exactly. So I don't know. What do you do with the basketball All-Star game? One thought might be make it co-ed. Do it with the WNBA, a mixed gender team.
That's not a
Why
bad
not?
idea. Yeah.
You give a little more visibility to the female players. They're good basketball players.
Yeah.
Some of them are coaching in the NBA, even, former players. So why not? But at the same time, it's still kind of like, meh, just give them a week off or something. And I don't know. Just be done with it.
But that's the thing, Greg. Here we are. Here I am. Going back to the good old days. But you do remember the good old days when stars actually took part in the slam dunk contest and took part in the 3-point contest. And Larry Bird was winning the 3-point contest, and Dominique Wilkins was putting on a show in the slam dunk contest, and even the All-Star game itself. There was at least a little bit of pride there where, back then it was a high scoring game. It was more like, 140, 130 or something like that. This was just a complete farce. And, I watched it more for the train wreck thing of it. No, I didn't watch the whole game, but when I saw the score online, I tuned into the fourth quarter just for the, just for the slow motion, actually more of a fast motion train wreck it was turning into. Because at that point, it was pretty obvious that both teams just cared about how many points they could score and weren't going to do anything else. And I think Nick nailed it. There is such a thing as too much offense, and we just saw it.
Well, I think what you mentioned a few minutes ago, that the Major League Baseball All-Star game was perhaps the best. And I think, first of all, I think you're right. Yeah. And there were a lot of reasons for that. The players all dressed in their own uniforms.
That's another point. Yeah.
Generic uniform. That was, to me, I always thought that was cool. You showed up in the uniform that you played in normally, but it was the best representation of the game, of the regular season game. I remember the NHL has had some All-Star games where the score's been in double digits for both teams. Yeah. This 211 and 96 196 debacle the other day. I think what tarnishes these games is when they're not even close to a representation of a regular game. I'm with you. I'm not expecting these guys to go to play lockdown defense either, but there's no the All-Star game of these respective sports are not even close to what you would normally see in a professional matchup. And I think that's what I think tarnishes them, because they're just not, they're almost like parodies of themselves. They're not, they can't be taken seriously. You can't, the basketball all-star game though, I thought it used to be kind of fun, because it was like schoolyard basketball. I don't mind a little schoolyard ball. When it gave people guys a chance to kind of show off their ball handling skills and their passing skills, and that's fine. I thought that was kind of nice. But when it gets to the point where you're right, there is such a thing as too much offense. But I think it's the fact that these games have become so far removed. The all-star version of the games have become so far removed from what a regular game is. I don't think you can connect with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Is that I guess that's what it really it's lost all resemblance to what an actual NBA game is, and I think that's the best way to put it. And I really don't know. What really comes down to, guys, though, is I don't know how you can get the players to actually care, and if the players don't care, why should the fans care? And even then, it really looks like the All-Star game has changed into, if you look in the stands, I mean, the tickets were going for stupid amounts of money, and it was all, for the most part, corporate and celebrities that were in the stands for the All-Star game at this point. And and I don't know. I guess that's really what it comes down to, Nick. If the players don't care, why should anybody else care? And the thing is, I don't see what would take to make the players care, other than if you started to pay them ridiculous amounts of money for one game, and like you get $1 billion each if you win or something like that, which would be a big deal to like rookies on minimum contracts and things like that. And I do have to also admit, Nick, that without Pistons in the game, I think that's kind of playing into it too.
Yeah, well, don't hold your breath for one of those guys getting on the All-Star at this rate. But what incentive is there for a player to kind of really play a game out there? Like, how much are you going to have to give a Kevin Durant, who's already making probably $40 million a year,
right,
to give a shit for one extra game? And I'd throw on top of that whatever that in-season tournament is on top of all of everything else
going on that. Yeah,
it's like I didn't even know that thing happened when someone said it's over, and I don't know who it was that won it. Like, so
yeah, that's right. Who did win it? I don't even remember. Greg, do you remember
even know who played in
tournament?
No, I do not.
Yeah,
I do not. I don't.
Oh my God.
Let's figure out what we're going to end up guessing first: the birthday game, or who the hell won the in-season tournament.
No kidding.
But no, some of the All-Star games have become spectacles, and they've gotten really cheesy, and so you are getting away from it being a game where the best players have earned their way onto that roster. So. And it's a circus now. Now you have these skills competitions, which you've kind of had that in basketball for a while, but you can at least see the best players being at their best in the past. You just don't see that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I don't know. I think shut those games down. Good riddance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because nobody cares.
Because
things
change. Yeah, you're right. Things change. There's no reason why you have to keep having the same event when people are having less and less interest in it. That's a very valid point right there. Why not? There's no law saying you have to have an All-Star game, and I think Nick nailed it. I think the players would just like to have a week off, but that's a whole nother discussion when it comes to the 65 game rule, when it comes to winning awards and rest days and. That's a whole nother can of worms we'll have to discuss later in the season. All right, before we start kind of hitting the home stretch, talking a little Tigers and Lions, Greg, I guess it's time for the big money question of the birthday game.
Well, this is it, guys. No longer can win the chess set, but this is for pride. This person Born in 1957, scored over 500 goals, played for the Blues, Flames, Penguins, and Bruins, won 2 cups with the Penguins. Nick was on the right path with the Penguins. Gosh, I'm trying to think what else I could say about this guy. I got to give a giveaway thing here.
Was he a center? Was he a winger?
He was a right winger.
Oh, I was going to say he wasn't a goalie, obviously.
No, it wasn't a goalie. He was an assistant coach for the Flyers. Not that you would know of him from this, but he was an assistant coach with the Flyers for 10 years. Come
on, Nick. We added you to this show just so you could help with the questions.
Okay. The only guy I'm thinking of is Ron Francis.
No, not Ronnie Francis.
And I don't even know if he's American, to be honest, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I don't think he is, actually.
Yeah.
Isn't that our 51st state anyway? Shh.
Yeah, what can I give you that would give it away?
At this point, Greg, you might as well just tell us because I'm drawing a blank.
Because I don't think I can give you something that would give it away necessarily, where you would say, "Oh, it's so and so." It's Joey Mullen, Joe Mullen.
I never would have got that.
Yeah, Joe Mullen. Yeah.
Now I'm going to look him up because I can't believe he's got 500 goals.
You made that name up, yeah. Greg's just making stuff up at this point. Greg has run out of ideas, and he's making up names.
Joe Mullen.
Oh. No,
just goes to show you can score 500 goals in the NHL and be an unknown. Yeah.
That does not even ring a bell. But then again,
I remember the name, but I never would have guessed.
No, I'm sure I've heard it, but I never would have guessed it. I would have thought, oh, that must be a guy who was a career AHLer who had a cup of coffee or something.
Right,
not a 500 goal scorer. All right, okay. Now that Greg has stumped us with probably the most obscure player he could find, the most obscure goal scorer he could find. Let's touch a little Tigers. Then we'll wrap up on what's going on with the Lions. And I guess the big news, other than spring training has started, and the Tigers are 1-1-1, a win, a loss, and a tie in 3 games so far. That's what that makes a difference. But they actually signed a third baseman. They filled their gaping maw of a hole at third base with a veteran journeyman. The Tigers signed 32-year-old right-hand hitting infielder Gio Ursula to a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. Has $500K in incentives when it comes to the amount of at-bats he gets. He can play every infield position, but has spent the vast majority of his career as a third baseman and was actually a 2020 Gold Glove finalist. 8-year vet. He has a career slash line of 277, 322, 423. Not bad. A career 745 OPS. But most importantly, he really rakes against left-handed pitching. Last year, he had an 868 OPS against lefties. But he did have an injury-shortened season. He actually fractured his pelvis last year, making a play. I'm not sure how it happened, but he was with the Angels last year. Fractured his pelvis, played a little less than half the season. Thinking he had 68 games, something like that. So, for all the people calling for the Tigers to make a signing, Greg, I don't think Gio Ursula was on the list of guys they wanted. But he looks like a guy who, at the very least, is a legit big league ball player who should be able to help. But he's not a star by any means.
No, and that's where they are right now. The Scott Harris era has of course been filled with a lot of. I was kidding a little while ago about going to Google, look some of these guys up. It's been filled with these kinds of acquisitions, and probably we'll see a lot more of this kind of stuff. Yeah. Before it ends, but I think what he is doing though, Harris, he is building some sort of depth. He is creating some sort of. He's addressing. Hinch seems to like what's going on here. He seems to be in agreement with the way that Harris is giving him some options to move guys around the diamond. Not be. Hinch has never been one of these guys, unless you're an all-star, who likes to have one guy play one position. He likes to have guys have flexibility. The Matt Vierlings of the world will always have a place in AJ Hinch's heart because he likes that kind of a player. And so, but what he's not doing, Harris, is he's not breaking the bank on any of this stuff. He's not, he's not handing out ridiculous contracts and so forth. It's clearly too early to tell. but he's starting to win me over a little bit. Harris is, because I do feel like with him though, and I wasn't seeing it initially, but I'm starting to think now that he's been around for a couple of years, I'm starting to see a semblance of a plan, a semblance of the Scott Harris way, or the Scott Harris type of ball player, and that's okay. That's a good thing. It's a good thing to start to see that materialize. We've got a GM in town here, Troy Weaver, who has no plan, seemingly has no rhyme or reason to anything he does, and he's been here for a lot longer than Harris has. We don't know what the Troy Weaver way is. We don't know what a Troy Weaver kind of player is. We don't know what Troy Weaver's plan is. We don't know any of those things, and Weaver's been here for 4 or 5 years now. Harris, though, I get the feeling that he's got some semblance of a plan, and he's signing players that fit into that plan. That's my impression. Now, the minor league system is pretty deep. I mean, they're starting to see a pipeline now of players that are coming through, and they're not all going to make it. Some of them are going to still be in the minors when the season begins, and maybe will still be in the minors when the season ends. So they're starting to build a little bit of a pipeline, and they're starting to build some depth at the big league level. They're not. Some of them are cast-offs. Yes, that's true. That's absolutely true. But that's okay. I mean, if they're in a division where they only have to improve their win total by maybe 10 to have a shot at the division. So I think he's doing an okay job of towing that fine line between the rebuild and taking that next step. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point, because hell, if the Tigers play even like 480 ball the first 6 weeks of the season, they're actually probably competing for a playoff spot at the end of the year. No, they just cannot get it off to a slow start this year. It just can't happen again.
Right.
But Nick, are you I'm sure you see this on social media. I know there's a significant portion. There is a loud portion of the fan base yelling for the Tigers to make a splash signing, be it JD Martinez or who's Matt Carpenter, who would have been probably the third baseman people kept talking about. But where do you fall on this? Like, the Cubs just signed Cody Bellinger for 3 years, $80 million yesterday. And he's had one good year on the last 4. And that was last year. So, that's what gets me, is that people yell for splash signings, but the last time the Tigers made a big splash signing, they ended up with Javi Baez.
Yeah. Well, they also ended up with Rodriguez, which he was okay, but
yeah, he was a good pitcher, but there was all the outside stuff that caused the issues with him.
I'm still not high on Harris.
Yeah.
I still go back to the GM's job is to build a competitive major league team. That's his first and ultimate goal. And yes, I get the logic of building up the minor leagues and building up a pipeline of players coming up through the minor leagues, but shit, the guy can't sign many good or trade for any good major league players so far. I don't know who he signed yet. This third baseman might be the best one he's signed so far. I mean, he looks like a decent player. I don't know anything about him, so I looked him up. So he looks like a solid major leaguer. So
yeah, league average major league player, essentially.
Some serviceable major league player. Fine, no problem with that whatsoever. But he's got this philosophy of not blocking the young players, and I'm like, please block them, because I want to see competition. I want to see the young guys fight for their position. This shouldn't be 4A ball, seeing who's going to stick around and who's not. So he has to field the major league team. So, and I don't know if he has the capacity to pull off a clever trade, some kind of creative trade. I have no idea. The only major trade he's worked on, he screwed the pooch on that one. Right. And so, and can what's his name that he brought in as the GM do it? I don't know. I have no idea.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want to hear about developing young players anymore. There's too many of those damn guys on this team. It's like, put out a competitive fucking team for a season. Not just good enough to win the Central, but good enough to win it all. This has been shitty baseball overall. They're under 500 last year, and we were excited because they got to where Al Avila's team from 2 years before that got to. I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed at all. So I hope the young players do well. I hope they get better than last year. But there's so many of them. How can you bank on that? And I contrast that to the Red Wings.
Yep.
Yzerman's going for the long game too. He's trying to build up the minor leagues as well. But he knows that nobody's going to put up with that shit for very long. And I don't think with the Detroit Tigers, it's a question of Chris Ilitch being cheap. I don't buy that argument that I hear online. That's bullshit. Because he's shelled out money for Javi Baez. He's shelled out, decent money for Rodriguez and gosh, who's the other guy I'm thinking of? Jordan Zimmerman before that. So he's pulled out his checkbook. He's just not going to sign away $300 million for one player, which is stupid. Show me a team that kind of signing has hurled them into the World Championship.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see with Shohei Ohtani. But that's a creative contract too. That's very, very backloaded as well. So that's another thing to think about. That when some teams are being creative with these deals, or they're signing them for low AAV at ridiculous length. Which and the Tigers aren't doing any of that so far. So I can understand. I do understand what you're feeling, though, Nick. I completely agree with this. When you put everything on the shoulders of the young players, they're expecting Torkelson and Green and Meadows and all these guys to really, Kerry Carpenter, all these guys to carry the weight. And that's a lot to expect that every single one of these guys to have a legit big league season. How often, Greg? How often do you see that where every young player gels at the same time? It just rarely, if ever, happens.
No, Nick's criticisms are valid. He makes good points, and he's right to be cynical. All I'm saying is that it seems like at least he's got Harris has some semblance of a plan. But Nick's right. We have not. The jury is out on whether or not Harris has the capacity to pull off that clever move, to be that. That guy that makes that nifty little trade that is, turns the corner. I mean, we don't know that yet. That's true.
Yeah, like Dave Dombrowski used to do.
But it's also a different era. Those kind of trades, you don't see that happen for the Dave Dombrowski era, which wasn't all that long ago, is not now. You don't see trades in baseball like you used to.
Not with prospects. No.
Not even. Period. I mean, not even at the winter meetings, which traditionally, when I was younger, I used to get really excited over the winter meetings because it was something in December that you could. There was always something that would come out of the winter meetings.
Like the Miguel Cabrera trade.
Well, even before that, I'm talking the 70s and 80s. There was always something that the Tigers would do. They were never active in free agency, of course, in the Jim Campbell days, but they would make trades, and they would make sometimes pretty big trades. And I was always excited to see, okay, what's going to happen in that 1 week in the winter meetings. So they pull off something, okay. And then you were always excited about the new players going into spring training, seeing them in the Tigers uniform and stuff. Chet Lemon as a Tiger and all this stuff. And now, though, they just, so I don't think it's a Scott Harris thing. I think for whatever reason, those kind of trades, the trading, the hot stove league in general, it just is not what it used to be. It just isn't.
Yeah, we need to see another Nate Colbert trade or something like that. But but those are the kind of moves that the Tigers made in that area you're talking about. And no one's for all the young people. Nate Colbert was Padres first baseman in the 70s who had some very good years. Tigers traded for him, and he fell off a cliff and did nothing after that. So,
that's right.
But those are the kind of deals that Greg's talking about that were made over the winter, and were and And he's right. No one makes those deals anymore. And look at free agency. You know, Scott Boras is holding off, but the vast majority of his big name players have still not signed. I believe Bellinger was the first to sign yesterday. You know, how does the reigning Cy Young winner, was it Snell, has not signed a contract yet? That makes no sense to me.
Right.
But that's today's game for whatever reason.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
I guess with that, we don't have any more birthday questions, but we do have some Lions topics. Biggest, it's somehow the NFL is a 24/7, 365 league, because the big news from the NFL started this week with the salary cap and that it's skyrocketing and players are going to get paid. Guys, the NFL announced a significant increase in the salary cap. It went up to 255.4, from 224, about $30 million. The Lions project to open the league year with almost $64 million in cap room, the 8th most in the NFL. So now that leads to who gets extensions. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Aleem Mitchell are eligible for contract extensions. They have to figure out what to do with Penei Sewell. He was a first round pick, unlike the other two guys. So he has the 5th-year option to be picked up. It was announced this week that 5th-year option will be $19 million. And then there is the Jared Goff situation. There's a lot of talk of a 4-year, $200 million deal. But that's still, nothing's been confirmed. That's just talk. But here we are. And it was announced just before we started the show. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, the special team ace, just signed a 2-year contract at $4 million per. It was 2 years, $8 million. So, guys, Nick, I hate talking about salary cap and the importance it is and what the Lions can do about it, but that's the kind of the way the game is now. Is that you don't have, you're not just a collector of talent. You need to be a damn accountant and run a really good spreadsheet and know the ins and outs of the cap, because that is such an important part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a problem the Lions have had. Yeah. This is a good problem to have for the Lions, because I don't think I've ever seen them really have that problem. Mm-hmm. I've seen them try and throw stupid money at players that were good. Yeah, like Ndamukong Suh, they were going to bust the bank on him, and probably a good thing that they didn't. But
right.
So, I mean, for sure, I can't see why they wouldn't sign St. Brown, Aleem McNeil, and all these guys you mentioned. Sewell, I don't think they're going to let him walk at all. So,
no. And I guess the point is that the quicker you sign these guys, the cheaper they're going to be. You don't want somebody else setting the market, in other words.
Yes. And, it's better to get them signed early and keep them around. It's kind of like, that we talked about it last time, the Colt Keith deal. Why the hell would you give this money to a minor leaguer? Yeah. Let's assume he does well. That'll be a bargain. But, he's got the players got security too. So, plus, the advantage to being on the Lions, they look like a contender. Yeah. So that's the other thing. I mean, again, going back to Suh, he took the money and went to Miami, and they sucked. Yeah. Even with him on the team, they were never good. So,
and Suh really did pretty much confirm he was just a mercenary. He was out to make as much money as he could, and he didn't. And then he started chasing rings at the end of his career. He was just out to make cash, which I don't blame players for being that way. To be honest with you, the careers are short. Time to make the money is now. So, Greg, if Amon-Ra is going to get $25 million a year, at least he's proven to be worth it. He's probably going to set the market when it comes, or close to it, when it comes to the wide receiver market.
Yeah, I mean, these guys when they head into this part of their career, that second contract.
Yep.
That's usually, for a pro football player, that's usually the one where they're going to make bank. I mean, that's the one they have to really cash in on. It's different for quarterbacks. Quarterbacks that window, I think, extends a little bit for a wide receiver or any other skill position, running back, for example. That second contract is the one. St. Brown is he's so good after he catches the football. I think that's what separates him from a lot of receivers, because there's a lot of receivers that can't make the yards that he makes after he catches the football. And it's kind of a trend now to talk about yak, but it is very important. If you throw a slant to a guy for 8 yards and he turns it into a 19, 20-yard gain, and he does that consistently, which is what St. Brown does, and he's got the nose for the first down marker. I mean, this guy's got like they talk about having quarterbacks having built-in clocks. He's got a built-in stopwatch. He's got a built-in nose for where the first down marker is. It's uncanny. He can catch a football, even go back a little bit, lose a yard, and turn it back upfield because he's trying to avoid a tackle or something. He's an incredible first. I don't know how many catches he makes for first downs, but that's got to be up there too. And keeping the chains moving and getting those first downs is, that's where the money's made. I mean, that's where drives are kept alive, and that's where it turns into points, which turns into wins. So this guy, St. Brown, he's never going to be the burner that goes down the field and catches a 50-yard bomb. But he is the guy that'll catch a 15-yard pass and turn it into a 50-yard play.
Yeah, it's you have elite players, you got to keep them, and especially that's just how it works. Because Nick, Amon-Ra St. Brown was a bargain for the first 4 years of his career. The Lions were getting elite production on essentially league minimum wages. That's just how the game's played. What you got, sooner or later you have to pay the piper when you get your hands on elite players, and that's one of those things where it's just the price of doing business. If that means that to sign Amon-Ra St. Brown you have to cut Tracy Walker, well, that's the name of the game. That's what you have to do.
Right. Well, the other thing with the Lions have picked so well in the drafts that they're going to run into a lot of players that deserve a big payday, but at some point they're just going to have to let some of these guys go. Yeah. Fortunately, if you are drafting well, you can find a replacement for them too. So, hopefully that's what's going to happen with Brad Holmes. Every sign points to that right now. So it even though they're going to pay a few core guys a lot of money, they're still going to draft well and still field a competitive team. So.
Yeah, Greg, that's a good point, because we could see the Lions have to make some decisions on guys that they might like to keep, but will elect not to because they're like at positions easier to replace, like guard, for example. Both their guards are free agents, and there's a lot of talk that they may just replace Jonah Jackson in the draft and just decide to pay Graham Glasgow and keep him, and then and as Nick said, then use your drafting skills to plug that hole, or for that matter. I think Taylor Decker, who's not getting any younger, I think he's one of the oldest players in the team at this point. No, he's around 30. What do you do? Do you extend him, or is that someone, because you essentially have his replacement there in Sewell, and then you can then try to find a guy to play right tackle instead. So we're going to see some painful decisions made. Maybe not this year or next year. But 2 or 3 years from now, there's going to be some difficult decisions this team's going to have to make if things continue at the pace we hope they do.
Yeah, you're right. You can't keep everybody, and that's for sure. And even with the extended salary cap that you mentioned that's started this discussion, you still can't. You still can't do it because it's always a matter of numbers but here's the thing about Holmes with these tough decisions.
Yeah.
The first one was when he first came into town. It was like, should he lock up Kenny Galladay? Should he franchise tag him? Should he lock him up? And Holmes wasn't here for very long, and he said, well, I think we'll just let Kenny walk. And Kenny walked to the Giants and didn't do anything. And I think he's out of football now. And
he got paid big money to be.
He did
huge money.
Nothing for the Giants. Did nothing for the Giants. The other decision he made, Holmes, that was unpopular initially with the fans, was getting rid of Jamal Williams.
Yeah,
Jamal Williams was such a popular player with the fans. He wore his heart on his sleeve. Who could forget that emotional?
He's the definition of a culture guy.
Right. Who could forget that interview he gave after the Lions beat the Packers?
Yep.
At the end of the season in 2022, and he was crying like a baby. Okay. And he was scoring touchdowns left and right. He really captured the hearts of the Lions fans. And when Holmes made that decision, that was met with a lot of angst. And then they brought in Montgomery, and we know what happened there. Yeah. So, that's why it's so important. And that's why I'm always amazed at these teams like the Chiefs and these other teams that can consistently be in the upper echelon. It's so hard to do in the NFL. It really is, because you have a finite amount of money. You've got careers that are finite. These players don't last. They have short shelf life, really. Yeah. And so, that's really, so it's impressive. As much as I don't like the Chiefs, I'm sick of the Chiefs. It's impressive what they do. Of course it helps have a generational quarterback. Of course it does. But a quarterback alone doesn't win Super Bowls. They're able to build. The Chiefs are able to sustain, and the Packers to a degree, success in a world where the NFL is not built for that. The NFL is designed by design, is designed to be against that. It's designed to work against you having a dynasty with rotating schedules and the salary cap, and with the lengths of time of those players, and they almost encourage you to cut guys in the office, cut guys that are actually star players that you really don't want to cut sometimes. Yeah. The NFL is not set up to feed into a dynasty. It just isn't. I can see the dynasties of the 70s with the Steelers, and the 60s with the Packers, 80s with the 49ers. That's one thing. But to be a dynasty now with the kind of rules that are out there, that's extremely impressive. So, there's going to be decisions that Holmes is going to make that initially fans are going to have a knee-jerk reaction and say, oh my God, I can't believe it. But then there are going to be these moves like the Reeves-Maben thing, who I think now has become the highest paid special teams player in NFL history, which some people may laugh at, but you look at what this guy does and as a special teams player, he's worth it. And he really is.
Well, Greg, you mentioned the Chiefs, and I also don't want to talk about them ever again, but they got rid of Tyreek Hill, 3-4 years ago. Right. And people are like, what the hell? They're getting rid of, like a top shelf receiver like this.
Right.
They haven't missed a beat.
Right.
They figured out how to fill that void and win. Super Bowl win, and not just a playoff team. They're still, champions. So hopefully the Lions can only hope to, reach that caliber of sort of winning and dynasty. So hopefully they do. We'll see.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that Brad Holmes, I guess he's going to the combine starts this week. I think it's actually started today. The actual televised workouts aren't until like Thursday. But Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are supposed to speak to the media. Going to be at the podium, as they say, tomorrow. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the next show. But Brad Holmes is on our local sports talk radio station today, 97.1, which we all have issues with, but they are the broadcast for the Lions. So Holmes makes an appearance, and a couple things that he said today, I think, kind of gave us an idea of what his plan for the team is. One, he mentioned that when it comes to the draft, in his words, there's only a subset of true cornerstone players you can identify. If you pass those players over in the draft trying to fill a need, you can get yourself in trouble. In other words, use free agency to fill needs, and then use the draft to find the best player available regardless of position. And I think we actually saw that in action last draft when he took, when he was taking, running backs and off-ball linebackers in the first round where everybody lost their minds, and turned out it was actually a pretty smart thing to do. And also Holmes mentioned that he doesn't feel a pressure or an urgency to make a big offseason swing on free agency, because in his words, he does not buy into the one player away from winning the Super Bowl narrative. So I think that kind of sums up, Greg, Brad Holmes' philosophy in a nutshell. One, you are much like Steve Yzerman. He's not going to mortgage the present. He's not going to mortgage the future for the present. He's going to he has a plan that he believes in. He's going to continue to follow that philosophy. And it does kind of make sense that it's easier to fill needs in free agency rather than to reach or do things you may not feel comfortable in the draft just because you need a specific position filled. Much like, I guess you could say, look what the Lions tried to do that at cornerback a few years ago. Ended up with Jeff Okudah, who was a massive bust. Yet, Holmes is more I'm going to take the best player available. If that player is a wide receiver, for example, at pick number 29, he's going to take a wide receiver. Some people might lose their minds over that, but so far it's worked for Brad Holmes.
Well, this is what Nick mentioned the Tyreek Hill thing, which is a great example a few minutes ago. You can do those types of things with letting a guy like that go if you've got somebody else to replace him. Yep. So that feeds into the I'm going to take the best guy available thing that you're talking about. If it indeed is, let's just say for sake of argument, a wide receiver, and you may say, well, geez, that's the last position the Lions need right now. Well, okay, well let's look at a couple of years from now. And maybe a couple of years from now we don't have Josh Reynolds here anymore. Maybe we don't have. Who knows what's going to happen with Jameson Williams? Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, so it's just that's how you're able to do things like that. And the Patriots used to do that too. Yeah, they used to let guys go, and you'd say, "Geez, really?" And they would just have another guy step in but that's not the norm. The norm is for teams to scramble. Try to put together a competitive team that'll be good for a couple of years and then suck again for a couple more years. And you try. I mean, that's the pattern in the NFL. It's like an EKG graph. Okay. Very rarely do you have a graph where it's like this steady, like this, like the Chiefs are. So but I think that's what Holmes is trying to do. He's trying to make the Lions really, really good for he wants to, I think he sees an opportunity with the young core that he does have. Of his team being one of those top NFC teams for maybe 3 to 5 years straight. And he thinks he can do it with a good quarterback, with really good, really good players at key positions, tight end, wide receiver, a good offensive line. He sees a window here of opportunity, and I think even if the salary cap wasn't extended, I think he would still be able to do it. Because he's shown quite an acumen at finding guys in the draft. And that Steelers in the 70s were built. They've got Hall of Famers that were drafted, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round on that team.
Yeah, Nick, it's I could very easily, for everybody to say, oh, the Lions have to take a cornerback, the Lions have to take an edge, the Lions have to get a defensive lineman. I could very easily see, depending on how the board falls, Brad Holmes drafting an offensive lineman, drafting a guard or a tackle, drafting a wide receiver. It's really another linebacker. Who knows? A safety. I really do buy into his. I'm just going to take the best player available, and then we'll figure it out from there. And for him, it seems to be working. So at this point, I don't see any reason to argue against his philosophy of just I'm going to take the best player, position be damned.
I think I said it earlier. It's like, I can't argue with what Brad Holmes is doing in the draft. He goes against the dogma of the NFL draft that you hear from talking heads and a lot of fans.
Yeah, great word for it.
Oh, it's total dogma, and which usually means it's you're giving too much credibility to that notion, and he's picked really smart, and he's done smart free agent signings. Yeah. Greg mentioned the Patriots, and I remember they gave up. Remember when they gave up Trey Flowers? Yeah. And dumbass Quinn and Patricia signed them for like an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
And got nothing out of that. Yeah. Right. So that can be a disaster. Like the Patriots were done with him. He's not a $90 million guy.
Yeah.
So no matter if he had a good few years, but it's hard for me to argue with what Holmes is doing. With him and with Yzerman, like they do have plans. They're trying to make their team as competitive as possible on a long-term basis.
Yep.
And we may not agree with any individual decision, but overall, they are moving the needle forward. Whereas, let's go with the other extremes, the Detroit Pistons. Like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
The owner's picking the coach, the GM's picking, the draft and doing circus acts during trade deadlines and during the draft day, and they win 8 games. They could be like a 100 team by the end of the season. So
yeah,
they have like no idea what they're doing. But I have nothing to criticize Holmes about. He might miss on a few players, but hell, it's not a small feat to turn around the Lions of all teams.
Yeah.
It seems to crush most mortals. So
yeah,
all the power to him. I just want to sit back and watch what he does next. I don't care to criticize him. So
yeah, it's this town either seems to have really, really good GMs or really, really bad GMs, and I'm still not sure where Scott Harris falls in these, but I think what I'm talking about between the good and the bad. But yeah, it's hey, we're 2 months away from the draft in Detroit, so we'll have plenty to talk about when it comes to Brad Holmes' philosophy when it comes to roster building. So between that, he'll have the press conference tomorrow. I'm sure we'll touch that on the next podcast. So I think it's time to start wrapping things up, guys. So that means it's time for our jerk of the week. Nick, fire away. Who's your jerk of the week?
I'm going to kind of lump this together in like 2. I'm not sure what to call it, but it's basketball in the state of Michigan. First, I saw University of Michigan, who I can't believe they're even playing basketball, to be honest. I don't know what that is. It was Juwan Howard getting all hot and heavy on the court, and one of his players had to push him back and tell him to settle down.
That. Yeah. And
also, on top of that, I'll throw in beef stew and like whatever like dumbass thing happened in Phoenix. Nobody knows exactly what happened other than he punched one of the Drew Eubanks or somebody.
Yeah, that's who it was.
Of the Phoenix Suns before the game, and like that I don't get. I don't know what the hell would piss a guy off before a game. Like I can see the heat of the moment in the middle of a game.
Yeah, like the LeBron James incident from a couple years ago, where if someone hadn't stopped beef stew during that game, he probably would end up in prison.
I know, and like looking at that, it's like okay, it was like they were playing rough, and it was an accidental elbow even then, but he lost his shit for some reason. So he's got some screw loose somewhere. So. Those are my jerks of the week. It's like, settle down, guys.
Yeah, it's like Juwan Howard should have more to worry about considering when you saw the Chrysler Arena being essentially looked like 90% Purdue fans over the weekend at a Michigan home game. That's how far that program has fallen. That's sad. Greg, who is your jerk of the week?
Well, first of all, I think that Juwan is a dead man walking myself.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they bringing him back. My jerk of the week it's already begun. It's mock drafts. It's already begun. I'm seeing them already all week.
Preach.
Oh my God. I've seen them all week. The Free Press has been running them. Mock drafts. Every day I see some college guy I've never heard of. Could he be the guy? Could he fill a need? And it's already begun. We've got, and it's going to be worse around here because the draft is in Detroit.
Yep.
So the coverage is going to be, I think, even worse. But we're still 2 months away. We're just a few weeks away from the Super Bowl, and it's begun. And it seems like it starts. It's like Christmas gets earlier and earlier every year. It seems like this mock draft thing is just now we got to endure 9 more weeks or 8 or 9 more weeks of this stuff, and it's already annoying me already. And of course, I don't read it. I never read them. It's not like I'm investing time in these articles, but just the fact that I see them now is giving me a tick. Kind of like, remember Peter Sellers' boss in those Pink Panther movies, Herbert Lom. You get that little twitch in your eye. I'm getting that twitch when I start to see
Inspector. God, what was his name? What was his
Clouseau.
No, I know it was Inspector Clouseau, but what was Herbert Lom's character?
Oh,
name? God dang it!
Chief Inspector somebody.
Yes. Oh, jeez. Anyway, I'm sorry to derail you there, Greg, but continue.
No, that's it. That's it.
All right. Well, then, so you need to figure out who Herbert Lom played in those movies. I'm going to do my jerk of the week. I wasn't sure where I wanted to go with this. Should I go with Nike and Fanatics for the clusterfuck that has become the MLB uniform fiasco, or should I go with the court storming controversy between the Wake Forest Duke game? And I think I'm going to go with the court storming just because some of the ridiculous takes I am seeing of people defending it. Because what it really comes down to is, one, Wake Forest was favored. They were not the underdog. Usually, isn't it when you storm the court, it's because the underdog beat the favorite? Right. That's the other way around. Even with Duke, they were still Duke was the underdog at a home game for Wake. Regardless of that, now I started. Then they had this. They stormed the court, and one of Duke's star players got run over, and he has a badly sprained ankle. And it's not the first time it's happened this season. It happened with at Ohio State when they beat Iowa, the women's basketball. And Caitlin Clark got run over. The biggest star in college basketball right now.
Right.
And then I see online, you see randos, fans online defending it, saying, well, he initiated contact with the fan. And I'm like, okay, who is supposed to be on the court? The player or the fan? Right. Shouldn't we go all out to protect the players, not the people who are literally trespassing on the court? It used to be a cool thing. It really did. I think everybody loved court storming when it was a little more, I don't know if say nuanced or wasn't to the point where you see people getting trampled trying to get to the stands. But it's gotten to the point now, if people are getting hurt, specifically players, then you need to do something. And you can't defend the fact that it's just college kids having fun. College kids have fun, and then someone gets hurt, there's going to be repercussions. So if college students can't control themselves during court storming and people start getting hurt, well, then things need to change. So my jerk of the week is anybody who thinks that we need to keep court storming no matter what. No, things change. People get hurt. You make things safer for people. And, it's drunk college students do stupid stuff. And sometimes when you do stupid stuff, it comes back to bite you on the ass. So if you do something like, you start arresting people or you start forfeiting games, then, maybe things might change a little bit. So my jerk of the week is anybody who defends court storming without bringing into, well, what about the safety of the players? Because that should be the first and foremost thing. You got to keep the players safe. So that's my jerk of the week.
I don't blame you, Al. I remember the worst case of court storming, so to speak, was when Monica Seles got stabbed.
Yes,
during a game.
Yeah,
I mean that was pretty insane.
Yeah, bad things can happen when fans get on the court. You're right. So good. Good point. So I think it's time to get the hell out of here. At least start wrapping things up. So
I have an update. Herbert.
Lom, you do? Yes.
Herbert Lom played Chief Inspector Dreyfus.
Dreyfus, that's it.
Dreyfus.
Yeah. That might be the title of the show, Chief Inspector Dreyfus. I don't know.
As long as you didn't say Joe Mullen.
Yeah.
Joe Mullen.
Now that's the title of it. Who the hell is Joe Mullen? That's going to be the title of the show. All right. All right. Let's get ready to get the hell out of here. It's getting late. So let Nick catch his breath there. All right, Greg, if you could, why don't you get out where people can find us on social media, any thank yous, and what we can look forward to in future shows.
Sure. Follow me on Twitter at Greg. Subscribe to my Substack, gregino.substack.com. I'll be in your inbox every Monday. I would appreciate that. 2 weeks from tonight, we will welcome back Eastern Michigan football coach Chris Creighton. This will be Nick's first time being able to talk to Coach. We're looking forward to that. Interesting season last year for the Eagles. Not a good one necessarily, but interesting one, and we'll see what happens in 2024. We'll talk to Coach about that. 2 weeks from tonight, or 2 weeks after that, I should say, I'll let Nick talk about the next guest. We have another guest, March 25th, an author. I'm looking forward to that one. And, as usual, thank my lovely wife, Sharon, for putting up with this nonsense every 2 weeks. And for you guys for making Monday night so gosh darn fun.
All right, Nick, why don't you go ahead and tell us about our next guest a month from now and where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, on our March, I think it's 26th show, we'll be having author John Miller to join us. He wrote a book on the early days of football called The Big Scrum. Fantastic book. Actually, the book was recommended to me by a friend of the show, Bob Page. At about the time you were reading, Greg, you were reading that book about the forward pass. And it sounded very interesting because it mixed sports and politics in there very much so. So it was a very interesting book to read. So I'm looking forward to that. And in the meantime, if you want to join our little Detroit sports group, the more the merrier. Join us on Twitter. And you can definitely follow me at Nick Milanovich, you see right there on the screen. So we'd love to have you join the conversation. It's just a bunch of people who love their Detroit and Michigan sports talking with one another. So,
all right. Cool. And with that, let me get out if you want. Actually, as they said, always, if you like what you hear, please like, share, and subscribe online. You can find us at all the usual places where podcasts are found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public. TheKneeJerks.net is our homepage. That's where you'll find the links to all the social media, any guest information when it comes to books and that sort of thing. It's all going to be on that webpage. Also, if you just want the MP3, don't want to deal with an app, just go right to TheKneeJerks.net and download our episodes straight from there to do it what you will. And of course, I want to give thank you for you guys for putting up with our little shenanigans every 2 weeks, and a shout out to our listeners who we very much appreciate. But I think it's time to get the hell out of here. So hopefully, 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking a lot of football. We'll have Eastern Michigan head coach Chris Creighton, friend of the show. I'll have a lot to talk about when it comes to what the Lions have going on with the draft and free agency and what happens at the combine. We'll have a lot more information when it comes to the Tigers in spring training. And, of course, we will have a, hopefully, Red Wings playoff run and actually some trade talk to talk about as well, the trade deadline looming. So, until then, 2 weeks from now, this is LB Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Good night, guys.
And Greg Eno of the Greg Eno Substack.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 2 weeks.